All right, we're going to talk about kind of the highlights of the week, the lowlights of the week, go through these players, give you the fantasy perspective you need, which guys to sign, which guys to keep starting, which guys to say thank you very much, but move on. So let's do that right now.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
All righty, you guys ready for this?
Yep.
All right, Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Big week for Andy Dalton, big week for A.J. Green, the two combined for... Well, Dalton had 383 yards, but I think Green had about 217 of them.
Yeah.
I believe Andy Dalton was your start of the week.
Was he? I couldn't remember if it was him or Cam Newton, but both had monster week.
Either way.
Yeah, I know we talked a lot about Dalton. I told about 500 people to start him when they gave me those, like, Dalton or Matthew Stafford? No, go Dalton. You know, so big weeks from Dalton, big week from Cam Newton, Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
Monster week.
I believe Tyrod Taylor was your Mike start of the week.
Yeah, Derek Carr had another good week through the air in terms of yardage. In fact, the Raiders-Browns game produced a lot of yardage because McCown had 2 touchdowns and 341 yards. So if you rolled him out in FanDuel, if you rolled him out in fantasy for some reason, you got a good game.
So where are you guys at with Derek Carr?
He's a streaming option in a good matchup.
Okay, well, I didn't think it was a great matchup. Personally, going on the road,
I thought it was
Browns.
an okay matchup. Yeah, I mean, in a game that they're going to be competitive to win in is what I'm defining that as. Not necessarily like the best or worst defenses in the league, but where they're going to compete to win. I like Carr.
I like Carr a lot. The reason I didn't think this was a good matchup was because I expected it to be total low-scoring game. I didn't expect to be a lot of yards being put up between these two types of teams, but in most other matchups, he should be airing it out. So I actually like Carr quite a bit as a streaming option.
What do we think about Tyrod Taylor? Is he a quarterback one rest of season?
Absolutely.
At this point, moving forward, you have to play him.
It's just the same reason why Mike called, his baseline of 40 yards.
And he didn't even run yesterday.
Right. He didn't use that. But if he is having a hard time, you have that baseline he's going to fall back on. If he's not falling back on that baseline, it's probably for a really good reason because he's having a great game. So either way, I think Tyrod Taylor is a startable piece and should be owned in every league.
Okay, let's talk about wide receivers. We talked at length about Steve Smith. We got the rebound, the rubber band Keenan Allen game.
He's going to be brutal this year.
You think this will be the pattern, or do you just think he had a bad week too?
I think it's going to be...
I lean towards that thought.
I think it's going to be hard to predict Keenan Allen, and his second touchdown was the ultimate garbage. It was the backup quarterback. The game was over, and they just got him an extra touchdown. So his game went from good to having an elite time. But I have a difficult time thinking that Allen's going to do this every single week.
Yeah, I'll bet you it's more often than not that he has a good game. He seems to me
I'm fine with that, but I don't think it's going to be week to week.
Let me ask you about a couple more guys that people want to know. They'll see the big stat lines on the waiver wire, and they want to know if they should go sign these guys and whether it's worth signing. So Rashard Matthews and Ruben Randall.
I actually like Rashard Matthews.
I talked about it. I'm just laughing at how he scored one of his touchdowns.
Oh, that was his like rolling down the hill.
So the play was we're already into the Dolphins are getting blown out, and Ryan Tannehill hucks a ball up in the air about 5 yards too short. Everyone has to stop. Everybody falls over, including Rashard Matthews and the defenders. Matthews happens to catch the ball with a great catch, and then proceeds to roll into the end zone. He doesn't get up and run in. He casually rolls.
That's how Jason
like a
plays
log
wide
down
receiver.
the hill. Yes.
Yeah. Double stuff. Let me ask you a question on Rashard Matthews, because another guy we need to talk about a little is Travis Benjamin. We have not been believers. He had another serviceable week, didn't do a whole lot, but did get in the end zone yet again. Right. And I said last week I'd much rather have a Rashard Matthews on the waiver than Travis Benjamin. Both did all right, but where are you on Travis Benjamin going forward?
Probably the best option to start in Cleveland if you need to start a Cleveland option. I mean,
yeah,
that's not saying much.
Yeah,
I think he should be on rosters. I do believe that. I said that last week.
Would you start him?
Give me some names. I mean,
would you start him or Stevie Johnson?
That's a perfect name. I'd probably go with Stevie Johnson.
Yeah, I'm still going with Stevie. Phillip Rivers had a horrible day, and I don't expect that to continue for Rivers.
Would you start him or Sammy Watkins or Percy Harvin right now while Sammy's injured?
I'd probably go with Benjamin, I guess.
I think I'm going with Percy.
Yeah. I mean, it's those
Okay.
are
Any Minnesota wide receiver.
yeah,
Oh.
I'd start Benjamin, I think.
Yeah.
Benjamin's, he's performing. You can't ignore that. You also can't expect him to have a final season total of 18 touchdowns.
Right.
That's not going to happen either. So there will be weeks that he will balance out. And
You know who's going to have 18 touchdowns? Larry Fitzgerald.
Oh my goodness, we should have mentioned him. Why is he not in this section right now?
Because we try and put guys who aren't just straight up wide receiver ones.
Yeah, but he's worth talking about because people
Yes,
want to know,
I
is
agree.
this going to keep going? And let me tell you, we're Cardinal fans, so we watch these games. We've seen Larry for years. We know how good of a receiver he is. We know the change that offense has undergone, and we saw how bad he was with terrible quarterback play. They are making a concerted effort to make him a focal point of the offense. This is not an incidental thing. This is read number 1 is Larry Fitzgerald, read number 2 is Larry Fitzgerald, and then the rest of the guys. And they're getting him the ball in the red zone on purpose, even in games where they're blowing people out. This is almost, the Cardinals are still 6 points ahead of the Patriots on points scored for the season, which tells you that Arians is taking a very Belichickian view to finishing these games.
And
I loved when they went for it on 4th and 1. We're up like
it was the right
40
move.
to 7.
It was
Yeah.
the right move to do.
Unlike Gary Kubiak. The Cougs.
Coobs, man. But I think John Brown, while he's not putting up fantasy numbers, so fantasy players may not like this, part of Larry Fitzgerald's success is John Brown, is the threat of John Brown for other teams. There's another wide receiver you actually have to account for who could, if you take one play off and you go single coverage against John Brown, Carson Palmer is going to throw the ball up in the 50 yards in the air.
Well,
and we saw the fantasy mystic over here.
Oh.
His dreams almost came true, but they bounced ever gently off
my
of John
dreams
Brown's
went
hand.
into John Brown's arms and then bounced out in the end zone.
This was a good game from Palmer. It was a tough luck game for Palmer because
it
he
was
had
brutal.
multiple, there were drives where he led them down the field with 90 yards of passing to the one where Chris Johnson ran the ball in. That
Chris Johnson.
just happened. So, all right, let's talk about some running backs. We had just no running back performances from guys you expect, and then ba-boom from Devontae Freeman and Joey Randall, and some late
LeGarrette Blount,
late
Chris
Blount.
Johnson.
I mean, what are we reading here?
Devontae Freeman has now perplexed me because
He looked good.
through the first 2 weeks. He looked like the Devontae Freeman that we saw last year. He looked bad. What with an eye test, with numbers, everything. He looked bad. But yesterday, it wasn't just successful. It wasn't Julio Jones going down on the one and he happens to score a touchdown. He looked good. And now I'm very confused on what to do with Freeman.
30 for 141 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Falcons are 3-0. They went into Dallas. They came from behind because obviously you saw Joey Randall had 14 for 87 and 3 touchdowns.
The funniest stat on that, if you haven't heard of it yet, was that Joey Randall ran for, I think in his first 3 carries was 85 yards. Is that right?
That is correct.
And
he finished 14 for 87.
so in his next 11 carries, he got 2 yards.
And so we're on a Kristen Michael watch 2015.
You are.
Yeah, I was
I'm
just
not.
going to
No,
say the same
no.
thing.
Me and Jason are not.
You're on a Chris and Michael.
No, I'm saying people probably want an update from me.
All right.
Nope. No,
People,
go ahead. Go
people
ahead.
want
Go
it.
ahead.
People want it.
I was watching the start of the game like, okay, we can move on from Michael. Randall's taking the job. He looks good on his first 3 carries. And then, so what was the really stat line of it? So his next 11 carries, he got 2 yards. And you're like, oh.
There was an adjustment by the defense. They were going to make Whedon win. I mean, Randall went out.
But even if you put 9 guys in the box, a capable running back on 11 carries should be able to get more than 2 yards with the best offensive line in football.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I don't
So
know.
it-
I don't overthink that part at all.
But
he had a
so-
great game. You have to count all of his runs.
I am. So I am. You can drop him.
Oh, it's finally happened.
I wish I
Goodbye,
had some
Kristen.
button for that. LeGarrette Blount, garbage time. You're going to see this in garbage time. 18 for 78, 3 touchdowns. Chris Johnson, 22 for 110 and 2 touchdowns, 150 total yards. Had another pass catch for 40 yards. He kind of looked okay.
He looked pretty darn good. And so did the O-line opening up holes, and he used it, and he ran. But it wasn't just the O-line. Like when he caught that 40-yard pass, he had a nice cut near the out-of-bounds line, picking up another 20.
Fantasy owners need to understand Andre Ellington is going to play next week. Chris Johnson's still going to be involved. David Johnson's still going to be involved.
I don't think David Johnson's going to be involved hardly at all. That's what I gained from this little Chris Johnson experiment, is that when Andre Ellington comes back, Andre's going to be the man, and then David Johnson's going to be really a special teamer or need to get. I mean, he's not going to be startable.
Passing downs here and there. David Johnson still looked all right to me.
Oh yeah, when he got the ball, he was good.
Frank Gore had a good game, 14 for 86, 2 touchdowns, 1 late in a comeback win for the Colts. Thank goodness, because that game looked like it was over. Thank goodness for Colts fans.
Yep.
Because 0-3 with that team and what they were expecting would have been pretty devastating. But they came back to win. Mariota led a potential tying drive. I don't know. Did you guys see the 2-point conversion?
Yeah, classic Ken Wisenhunt.
Handed it off to a guy whose name I honestly had never heard before, who proceeded to, on the 2-point conversion, run 16 yards backwards and tear his ACL.
Yeah, and
did he actually?
No, I don't know if he tore it, but he was down on the field for a long time.
Had to have torn it. Did you see the way that his
writhing?
The way that his foot stayed in the ground and his body moved and his leg twisted and then a man hit it. That just
Ken Wisenhunt.
Terrible.
People.
Well, we're a little bitter. Don't make all the Tennessee fans sad. All right, Latavius Murray had a monster day, 26 for 139 and a touchdown. This is called you get all the carries and you get all the backfield catches.
Well, and actually, Latavius through about the first half of the game was awful. I think he had about 17 yards. So he exploded. You have to buy into Latavius Murray.
I love Latavius Murray. I've been telling a lot of friends of mine.
How many bets do I have with Latavius Murray on the winning side right now?
Oh, yeah, you're crushing it.
Yeah. He's my favorite RB2 to have on any team because I think he's limited from his upside because of the team as far as how many points they're going to be putting up every game. But even if they're in a bad matchup or if they're down, he's still the guy being used. He's a true bell cow, and he's talented. So I love him as an RB2.
There was a Roy Halou sighting. He got a catch.
Did he really?
He did. Oh, Roy Halou.
I know. The potential with your name. Just get in there and perform so we can say it some more. We're going to have to move on to some other name next draft season. My goodness. All right, tight ends had big games. Greg Olsen, we told you.
Back!
We told you, don't bail out on Greg Olsen. The target numbers were huge last week. Everybody's afraid of Greg Olsen. Well, 2 touchdowns later and 100,000 yards.
3 touchdowns if you count the one taken away by a penalty.
I don't count that one.
You shouldn't because he scored on about the next play.
Okay, Gary. He scored on the same drive and you wanted that one thrown in?
No, I'm just letting people know.
Well, Charles Clay had a good game on 7 targets. Clay Harbor had an okay game. Gary Barnidge. We talked about it.
10
targets. Start your tight ends against the Raiders.
Yes.